Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hello all and welcome to the EarthWorks podcast. I'm your host, Jack Higgins, and I'm here on location at Glen Head Country Club with our guest today, Mr. Ken Lochridge.
Nice to see you again, Jack.
Ken, thank you so much for hosting me here at the clubhouse, and we get a nice room here to chat and have a good discussion, a greenkeeping talk, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be very good. So it's here in October, rainy day in October. It's been kind of a crazy season. Let's, before we recap on the year, let's kind of do a little introduction about you. Let's hear about you. How long have you been here at Glen Head?
So I just finished my 10th season here.
Dude.
Which is hard to believe. It goes by in a blink of an eye.
When I met you, you were the superintendent at Muttontown Country Club.
Yep.
Okay.
So I was there for 5 seasons prior to Glen Head.
All right. Let's go back even further, because I know we also have a shared history. We're both Penn Staters.
Yep.
But you were there a little bit ahead of me.
I won't get into yelling we are right now.
No. That's fine. I'm taking the family there for the first time for a game, the Maryland game.
Nice.
Yeah, in November.
It's great.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I mean, it's going to be mayhem. My kids are way too young for this, but whatever. My wife wants to do it. So.
Nice. You can take them for the whole tailgating experience?
We discussed that. I don't know if the 5-year-olds got the legs for it's already going to be nuts.
It'd be a lengthy day for a 5-year-old for sure.
Yeah. So you grew up here in Long Island, right? You're not from Pennsylvania. I'm from PA.
Right. So I grew up in Centerport, which is where Huntington Crescent Club is. So that's really where I started out in the business.
Okay.
So I was, obviously grew up right around the street from the course, a couple blocks away. Used to sleigh ride there. My older brother was a caddy, so that's kind of how I got introduced to the game of golf, was by caddy, and joined the golf team in high school, started playing high school golf. And then it was about my junior year, I had a close friend of the family, kind of talking to me about what I wanted to do. And I thought I wanted to be a landscape architect at the time.
Ooh, that's a tough program.
I really enjoyed kind of landscaping in general, and I always kind of had, a thought of my eye on maybe designing or whatnot. So a close friend of the family was actually head of Marriott Golf Operations Worldwide at the time, Tom Schlick.
Awesome.
So he sat me down one July morning and basically sold me on becoming a superintendent. Probably the worst decision I could ever make in my life.
Thanks, Mr. Schlick.
But he, he basically said, "Listen, I'll get you into Penn State, and I'll get you a job. I'll promise you a job as soon as you graduate college." So for me, that was wow, I could see my whole life kind of being set up already. I was, wow, this is crazy. So he said, "Listen, go work for Harry Berenberg over at Huntington Crescent, and see if you like it." So I did. I went that summer and worked for Harry, and sort of, caught the bug, right? I loved working on the course and didn't mind waking up early mornings, even though I was, a 17-year-old kid, and I was riding my bicycle up there. And
well, you're obviously a hard worker, and that's what it requires. And you had a passion for golf.
Right.
And a passion for the outdoors, for kind of working with nature and making things really nice.
Right.
Marriott, do they have courses out here? Or did they have courses out here?
At the time, I think they had the Windwatch Resort, which is now like a Hamlet Windwatch. So it had changed hands after that. But I think at that time, the hotel and the course were all part of Marriott. Okay. But that was the only course on the island.
And all right, interesting. So you kind of took that path that he set up. You went to Penn State?
So not so fast.
All right.
So he said, "Listen, I know George Hamilton. I'll get you into the 2-year program."
Right.
But I was fresh out of high school with 1 season experience. And part of the prerequisite for them was that you had multiple seasons of experience. And it was really geared towards you. And that's like a shortened course, really geared towards guys that were returning to school.
Yes.
And really, definitive that this is what they wanted to do. They had a few years experience, and they were just kind of going back to get the schooling that they needed.
Right.
So that
Often
they
had a bachelor's degree in something else, or and it's very vocational.
So I had applied to, pretty much every turf school up and down the East Coast. I applied to University of Florida, Gainesville, because we had a vacation home in Florida, so I could get Florida in-state residency.
All right.
I applied to, I think, Georgia, UMass Amherst,
Virginia Tech.
not Virginia Tech, but like Cobleskill, Morrisville, SUNY, all these SUNY schools and SUNY Delhi. So after visiting them and not getting into Penn State because of that not meeting the criteria, I decided to go to Delhi for 2 years.
Okay.
So it wasn't really until, I guess, my freshman year, I went to the GCSAA national show, which was out in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And I really realized then that how young I was and how sort of not ready to be put into the working world after another year. So at that point I said, you know what, I think I really want to transfer to a 4-year program. Awesome. And graduate, have the full college experience and graduate college after 4 years. So that's when I made the decision to apply to Penn State and got in as a transfer student.
Okay, so did you do, how many years were you out there in State College? How much transferred over?
Right, so I was at Delhi for 2 years, graduated with associates in, I think it was golf course operations / turfgrass management,
awesome.
What their program was that time. And they were developing the 4-year program at that time, in addition to developing the mechanics program, which have turned out to be great for them.
Okay.
So a bunch of us actually transferred together. There was I think 5 or 6 guys that transferred from Delhi after graduating to Penn State. So I went into it as a junior and already knowing, we already had a small crew of guys
that's good
that went. So guys like Mike Armstrong and Steve Whipple and Dave Littman, guy Elliott Sanders. So there's a good crew of us that went to Penn
Are a
State.
lot of these guys still in the business?
Yeah, I think everyone's in the business still. Steve Whipple's up at West Point.
Okay.
Mike Armstrong is up in the Rochester area.
All right.
Dave Littman, obviously, part owner in Westchester Turf Supply.
Oh,
Bob Littman's younger brother.
Got it. Okay.
It was good. And then, Penn State was obviously just that great college experience.
Where'd you live the first year there?
I forget the name of the place, but
was
I can
it
tell you
on
the
campus?
address.
Okay.
601 Vero Boulevard. It was off campus.
Okay.
It was one of these newer.
With those guys.
Right, with those guys, right? We all lived together.
Yeah, that's good, dude. That's the way to do it. I had a good turf crew at school too, and it really helps. You're all taking classes together. You're all kind of doing the same thing. It really makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think, especially at Penn State, you can get lost. I mean, there's 40,000 undergrad at the time I went. So
no doubt.
So it was nice to have familiar faces, and you sort of had that. That home base to touch base with, and everyone was in the same program, and everyone was going through the same thing, and we all had the transfers, the credits transferred over, and you could really get a feel for, the difference between Delhi and Penn State was that coming in, we didn't have to take the turf, 101. We got all those transferred in, so. What the head numbered out.
No problem.
So, I didn't have to take all the, some of the prerequisites. Everything transferred over, though, because Delhi was sort of, it was a 2-year program. So it wasn't as much liberal arts that you would take at Penn State. Maybe your first 2 years, you would take all the, the English and, science and stuff like that. So we got a lot of credits transferred over as Hort credits.
That's good.
Enough to basically have a Hort minor at Penn State, but they wouldn't allow it because there wasn't enough Penn State credits.
I got a Hort minor, actually, over at the Tyson building. So,
but we came in, I think one of the advantages is we came into being a junior year where a lot of now you're really in the nit and gritty, and still some of the stuff first and second semester was review for us, which was really nice.
A huge advantage.
Because it certainly was a step above as far as the education component goes.
Okay, cool. So who was still there? What year was this that you got there?
So that's 98, 99. I graduated in May of 2000.
You still had the old school crew there.
Yeah, Hamilton, Watchkey.
Deutsch?
Deutsch, I didn't have any classes with him, and I'm not sure if he was still there at the time, but it was right around that time.
Waddington?
Again, didn't have any Waddington classes. But McNitt,
Andy
Fox,
had gotten there. Yep.
Fox was doing the soil chemistry class, which was difficult for us. So, it was a good crew. We had. I look back at it, and I think there's still most people I think from our class are still probably in the business. I feel like I run into people now and again at the show. So.
Yeah, this was the height of the Tiger era, the height of golf, the height of.
Yeah, I think there was probably over 100 in the 2-year program, and probably another 100 in the 4-year program.
I graduated 07, and I graduated I think 88 kids, something like that.
Yeah.
It was still very much booming. So, okay, so you had a great experience at Penn State. You had this cool kind of transfer situation. And then you were working summers this whole time?
Yeah, so certainly we had to do an internship as part of the Delhi curriculum. I'd applied a bunch of places around the island and ultimately settled up on National Golf Links of America working for Carl Olson. And it was a great experience, first of all. Comes from Huntington Crescent, which was like, a typical North Shore Long Island, Parkland-style course. Very heavily, flowers and just
Out to
a
National.
lot of stuff around every tee box, right? A lot of gardens and a lot of flowers around the clubhouse. And then you go out to National, and it felt like a different world. It felt like I was going to Scotland or something.
That's what it's like.
And it was definitely an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And, for Harry, I operated a lot of equipment, but, I don't think I had really maybe mowed fairways, or I certainly didn't spray. I know I was fertilizing, probably cutting tees and greens, raking bunkers.
Right.
So when I got out there, when you have to mow your first fairway and it's like, 15 at National, where there's like, 2 huge sort of punch bowls that go down, and you're like scared to be on the mower because you think the thing's going to flip. It certainly was.
Or you're going to dig an edge in and like tear the thing up.
Right. Or first approach cutting with, an old Jacobson triplex on the Redan hole. Again, there's no room to turn. And if the thing doesn't break, you're dumping it into a bunker that's 30 feet down. So.
Yeah, stressful mornings.
Yeah, definitely stressful learning experience.
Oh yeah. But so one summer out there, or a couple, or
so I decided to go back the summer in between. Carl had invited me back, so that was between Delhi and Penn State. So I did go back, and that year, so the first year I lived with my uncle. My uncle lived out in Southampton at the time, and my parents actually lived out in Shelter Island. So it really wasn't commutable from Shelter Island because the first ferry off the island is at like 7 a.m., right? So we're starting work at 6 or 5:30. So I lived with my uncle and rode my bike basically from where like Southampton College is. So right through the college, across the road through Shinnecock.
Wow.
And into National every morning.
It's so cool.
And I did that the first year. And I think I missed out on sort of that with some of the other interns, right? So there was always a few interns there because they always lived on property. And so, you get to pick Carl's ear late in the evening, and, maybe you play golf a little more than I did because, I had to
getting back home.
Yeah, I was having to strap my bag to my back and ride my bicycle, 2 miles back home. So the second year, he offered me the housing, and I went back and, worked with some great guys, Jeff Robinson, Derek Floyd. Dude. And just had a great summer. I played golf almost every day. I probably played that course more than a lot of those members will ever play in their lifetime. They play every day.
They're out there for 2 weeks a year.
Had my first unofficial hole-in-one there playing by myself on number 6 short. And, had to figure out whether I was going to finish the whole round or not. I'm playing by myself. I'm like, this doesn't count. No one's going to believe me,
Well, at least you didn't have to buy anyone drinks. Huh?
Right, I guess not.
It was the cheapest hole-in-one in history.
Right. But I definitely, it was a great experience. And the housing there at the time was great. There was a maid service that came in and changed your sheets and offered, fresh towels and whatnot. And, really was only 2 of us turfers that lived in that housing. And then you shared it with all the clubhouse staff. So it was like, most of them were like older, middle-aged men. They worked down like a Florida club during the wintertime, and then they came up and worked at...
old golf guys.
Yeah,
golf
absolutely.
Course guys.
They were like probably spending the wintertime at Seminole or something.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Did you get a good view of the sound from your room?
No, it's right off the... So if anyone's ever played it, it's just to the left of the second tee box and also to the left of the 17th hole.
Okay.
So it was very easy just to grab your bag and hop up to number 2 tee at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And with National, it all goes out to a single point and comes back, right? So the 9th hole is the furthest away from the clubhouse. So you could cut over at any time. So if you say you only wanted to play a few holes, you could play 2 through 6 and hop over to 14 and play 14 on in.
It's kind of...
And a lot of times that's what I would do. I'd play, through maybe I wouldn't cross over the road after 8T, I would maybe pick up on 7 on the road hole after that green and hop over 11, hit a shot in, play 12 through 17, and go in home.
That was the intention of golf, like as they started. I think like it's a walk in the park to some extent. Do what you want.
Yeah, play as far as you feel comfortable with, and then play back.
Exactly, and then come on back. Yeah, that's the St. Andrews experience too. Very very much the same. And I had a similar thing. Like I was living on property when I worked there, and I could take the bag out and play as much or as little as I wanted. Very cool. I also my mode of transportation was a bike, so I know what it's like to bike to work at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Sure, yeah.
It's not in the dark, and all the other greenkeepers flying by you in their trucks, like honking, maybe spraying puddles on you as you're coming.
Yeah, and it was interesting too, because so what I did was I would go back on the weekends. I'd go to Shelter Island. So after like morning shift on Saturday morning,
you take the ferry over.
This guy John Pino, who was there, who was like the old superintendent from Sag Harbor Golf Club. That was like that was like back in the day. They had the sand greens with the oil on top. Mm-hmm. So I would drive back on Sunday mornings to Shelter Island. He lived in Noyak or North Haven, so he would give me a ride to the ferry, and I'd go back to Shelter Island and get my mom's car. And then I'd usually leave town right away, go drive to Centerport, because I had a girlfriend back in Centerport, and basically hang out till 11 o'clock at night, drive back to National, and then basically Sunday morning crew again, and then drive the car back, have Sunday dinner with my family, and then they would give me a ride back, back to Southampton at that time.
Yeah.
Sunday evening.
Dude, that's a greenkeeper's routine.
Yeah.
You were working hard.
Yeah, certainly. And back then too, there was a lot of estate work after work.
Okay.
At that time in the mid to late 90s, we really, I don't remember ever really grabbing a hose at National. I'm not going to say that it wasn't anyone grabbing a hose, but I certainly wasn't grabbing a hose.
Wow.
There was a lot of just regular mowing and bunker raking, and those greens, I almost feel like Carl had that philosophy of just letting things be, right? And there was really no syringing. I remember him talking about because at Huntington Crescent, I had hose in my hand all summer.
Right.
We were constantly syringing greens and hand watering.
Totally different climates.
Totally different climates.
Up island and out east.
Right. Up island, you get a lot of 90-degree temperatures and humid weather.
Really
and it's really tight and no air movement. And National, you just had everything's open. And at that time, it's not like it is today with Billy Salinetti. There's almost no trees left on the golf course. But back then, you had trees in between every hole. You couldn't really see.
Interesting.
Like from between 8 and 11, you couldn't see the 11th hole from the 8th hole. It was like dense forest between there.
Wow.
And it really was along everything. Even the views now from between 3 and 15, there was trees all up in there. It was
it was a different place.
It was a different place, but it's such an expansive piece of property. You still had so much room and so much that was open. And you're on the east end of Long Island. They don't get the weather that they get up island. They don't reach 90 as often.
Overnights. You're getting overnight lows and everything like that. Right. Yeah, it's different. And you let the fescue go dormant, and it comes back.
Right. Some of the old German bents, and it was things definitely had survived over there.
That's right.
Over the years, so it was always survival of the fittest.
It was adapted to the climate.
Right.
Okay, so let's see. Moving on.
I did that. So I would used to take those, like I said, those weekend breaks. But during the week, there was so much estate work. So Carl had consulted on I don't know how many estates, but
it's still kind of a culture out there.
There was definitely all right, at 2:30, pack up, and Merrill's going to take you out, and we're going to go over to the Holmes' estate, and you're going to cut privet hedge on the privet maze that's there at the Holmes' estate, which was CB's old house that overlooked National. Now is the Bloomberg estate.
Yes.
And it was very casual. No one ever really told you the history. You had to kind of dig and find it out. But some really good stories from doing that stuff. First of all, you're walking on these properties that are amazing, right? They're in the Hamptons. They're on, sheep pasture lane or whatever. They're completely manicured, bent grass walkways.
And a lot of guys around the country grow privet, but there's no privet like East End privet.
And I feel like it even took a notch up since the late 90s. I feel like, the Hamptons culture was at that time was really growing, but I feel like in the early 2000s when like it just really exploded. You know, you had all these stars that were just everywhere out there.
Billy Joel.
But like I could remember specifically, I was telling this story the other day to my assistant, but you know, we would go mostly cut a lot of hedge and do some applications. And if we did applications, it was mostly granular. If anyone was spraying, they usually had their own crew that was there full time, and Carl would just consult with them on what to spray.
Did that CB estate have the short game?
I feel it did not at that time. So
Okay.
I was going to say, like, it was pretty rugged, right? Like, I remember just being like, there was a cryptomeria garden, which had like a reflection pond, and then this privet maze, which was like so cool. But there was like a separate maid's kitchen or a chef's kitchen in the back. And I remember like, you know, Jeff Robinson, JR, he'd turn to me and say, hey, go in the kitchen. I'm not going inside the house. You know, you don't go inside the house at these places. No, just go in that door over there and open up the fridge. And whatever you find, just grab some and bring it back. It was just stocked full of Corona.
Oh, man.
So we'd be cutting hedges and just
Drinking
pounding
beers.
back Coronas after like, you know, we're working out in the hot sun all day, 2 or 3 Coronas, and you'd feel a buzz going on. I'm like, this can't be safe. You know, mostly I was on the cleanup crew, but still, I mean, it was hilarious.
Don't work the chipper. When is there a better, like, for a 20-year-old guy like than this sort of thing?
Yeah, free beer.
Free beer, working in the most beautiful places in the country.
Absolutely.
It's so cool. Yeah. So that was your second assignment work, or no? It was after work.
Yeah, it was after work. This was all completely after work,
And it was encouraged.
Paid cash. You know, usually on the spot.
It's the best.
Yeah, it was great, and it was only usually, you know, maybe 2 to 3 days a week. It wasn't anything crazy. We weren't working 8-hour weekends like that. And I remember Timmy McCarthy, who was the assistant at the time, who's now the mechanic at Sabonic. He had this job. This, I think, was Wyman's estate. I'm not positive on the name there, but I know he went there every day and mowed. It was all bent grass mowed at like 3/8, you know, with like all the tree wells were all like rough, like cut at like 3 inches. They were all like perfectly manicured. So I know like he mowed every day and he sprayed sprayed the place once a week. So
Kept it really nice.
there was certainly other side work, which I never got involved in. That was just like, you know, they were like almost full-time caretakers of those places.
No doubt in keeping it at golf course standards.
So there was definitely, you know, a lot of opportunity out there for that type of work.
And there still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So was it hard to leave? I mean, when it was time to go, is because you moved on?
Yeah. So I mean, this was my second summer now, and now I'm at Penn State, and I'm definitely feeling like I wanted to go someplace else. And I also thought, well, you know, listen, the guy Tom Schlick from Marriott had been such a role model for me. He'd been such a mentor for me. I should probably repay the favor, right? So I asked him, I said, you know, do you have anything coming up? And, you know, he rattled off like, you know, Costa Rica and all these places around the world. And I was like, I just don't know if I want to like go to Costa Rica for a summertime. I don't speak Spanish. Living in like what he called was the barracks, you know, up in the mountains. And I'm like, all right, do you have anything more local? Well, we have Seaview. And there's the ShopRite Classic at Seaview, which is out in Absecon, New Jersey, which is right outside Atlantic City.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, I'll do that. And so that was the summer of '99.
Yeah, and that's the LPGA event, the ShopRite Classic, or was that?
So it was the ShopRite Classic then. I think it changed after I left. And I think it might have even left Seaview for a little while. And I think now it's back. As the ShopRite.
Yeah. All right, so you went down to Seaview, which is kind of similar to what it's like on the East End of Long Island, especially that Bay course, right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, first of all, right. So you have National Golf Link, which is probably, you know, one of the best C.B. McDonald properties, you know, in the USA.
It's where he decided to stay,
right? And you know, I going to South Jersey, certainly different, but the Bay course was Donald Ross.
Okay,
and the Pines course is the Toomey Flynn. And so when you get there as an intern, as many people I'm sure can understand, you get there in May, and it's like, you know, it's go time. You're not really getting involved in projects. It's usually like mow and spray and water.
You're right.
And the summer of '99, if everyone remembers, was a pretty dry summer. It was a drought year.
It was my first year cutting grass, I remember, and it was like the sort of summer where you couldn't cut grass for about 8 weeks,
right?
Because it was
it
so
wasn't
dry.
growing, right?
No.
Yeah. I just remember hearing that there was like all sorts of drought restrictions in the Philadelphia area, and rumors of like helicopters flying overhead. Make sure you're only watering greens. Don't know if any of that was true, but believable when you're a 21-year-old kid,
Right.
So it was a tough summer, nonetheless.
You were pulling hose that summer?
Definitely pulling a lot of hose. Definitely, definitely on the spray rig, every day. So that the spray tech, 3 weeks into my internship, the spray tech there that did most of the spraying decided to quit. He was going to go drive an oil truck. And so I got thrown in the seat. It was like right away. I was like, all right, you're getting on the sprayer and here you go. So I spent most of the summer really spraying, and there was a lot of 4 o'clock calls that hey, you got to go hop in the sprayer and go spray the Bay Course fairways right now, or something like that. And if anyone's familiar with the Seaview, there's a bar, basically the 2 courses are on either side of the road, and there's a bar right in between them. That's sort of an off-property bar. So that was the big thing. All the staff would go to the bar after work, which probably doesn't make for a great culture looking back at it. But I can remember specifically John O'Connor going to the bar and telling me to get on the spray rig to go, and I was peeling rubber with a hydrostatic sprayer, and he was like, "I've never seen those things peel rubber. How did you do that?"
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, so that was kind of the routine there. Yeah,
Right. And it was a good summer. It was a good summer to learn. You're growing grass in South Jersey in one of the hottest, driest summers,
and it's significantly hotter there than it is up here.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely hotter there, especially the Pines course. We didn't really have those bay breezes that the Bay course had, and the Bay course obviously was the championship course at the time too. So there was a whole, really they were 2 completely different courses, almost 2 completely different. Management of each course was different. I think heights on greens were different. Everything was different. The Pines course at that time was going through a little bit of a renovation. They had built their learning center, and I think at the time it was supposed to be an Elizabeth Arden Red Door Spa, and they were going to build condos. And so there was I think 3 or 4 greens that were there that were sodded, actually, all wash sod that came in. I think that was G2 bentgrass.
Wow.
That was sodded, and that was, it had to be June or July. I remember it definitely
So the sod was laid while you were there.
Yeah, and I definitely remember hand rolling and putting the first mow and all that stuff, and just nursing all that stuff for a few months, and it did well. And they did 4 different pre-plan amendments with each green, so it was cool to see the experiment of which one had this product versus that product, and which one got the high phosphorus versus not. So it was good. It was definitely a good learning experience.
Yeah. So. No EarthWorks at that time. Do you remember any EarthWorks? It triggered my thought when you were saying pre-plants and different things like that. Yeah, no, I don't think so. This was still fairly early in the EarthWorks EarthWorks life. But okay, so Seaview. This was another internship. Moving around. Did you go back for a second summer?
I didn't. So again, that year. My senior year, I decided again, now I'm going to need an assistant's job. I go down to the GIS show in New Orleans.
Oh, I've heard
and
about
that show. And it was Mardi Gras was starting, or during Mardi Gras. I mean, it was a wild time.
I've heard stories from that show.
And that's where I met my future boss and now good friend, Steve Rabideau.
Aha, that's where the Ravi connection came in.
Yeah, so he had interviewed me, and he, looked at me, I looked at him, and we both kind of had bloodshot eyes and just looked hungover as hell, and we're he's like, you want to come to Long Island? You got a job. Basically, that was it. He had known Harry and known they worked at National, so he knew my resume and was comfortable with all right, I basically called around and basically just offered me the job on the spot. And I think he was at that time. He was, the Hamlet wasn't a place that was going to be attracting, the highest quality.
And Hamlet was still Marriott at the time?
No, Hamlet was not Marriott.
Okay.
So that was a separate company that basically had bought the Windwatch. I think they did a little bit of renovation there, and they bought the Hamlet. What was Comac Hills was a public 27-hole facility.
Oh my gosh!
That then they basically bulldozed everything, stripped all the topsoil off, built 171 homes, and put a golf course in, basically on Yeah, I think they even mined like all the good sand from Mason sand. So
my
basically
gosh.
put all the crap back.
Oh,
And every fairway is sort of sunken down, right? The homes sit up.
bowl.
Yeah, it's all punch bowl. So all the homeowner irrigation, which Rabideau fought to have everyone turn their part circle heads that were on the edge of their property line to full circle so that they could water the rough.
Oh, wow.
But they also watered them, in the rain and after
All the
5 inches of
time.
rain and all the time. And so you had a lot of wet spots and poor draining fairways and heavily compacted and rocky soils. So
and everything draining to the fairway.
and everything drains to the fairway, right?
Yeah. Very
So
difficult.
it was a really tough place, not a big budget place. So it was a really tough place to grow grass. And at that time, so Hamlet was built in, I think, 94. So this is now 2000. So it's 6 years old, but essentially the growing process really took from 94 to 2000. I think, when Rab took the job, he, really had to kind of finish growing things in. I think it had taken that long to get things to be where they wanted them, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and yeah, it's a.
It was open for play. There's no doubt it was open for play, but it just wasn't. It wasn't. It was a tough place to grow grass.
Yeah, all bent grass. It was all bent grass.
Yeah, I
from
mean, it was
seed.
certainly a lot of POA at that time, but bent grass, USGA greens, that was another issue. The ridges and things like that, all the undulations were built out of the mix. So you had undulations that had 30 inches of mix on them, and then you had a low part of the green that only had 8 inches.
When we had Rabideau on this podcast, we spent a lot of time talking about the variable depth at wing foot. So it's
that
linking together.
Right,
that he had
so
history.
I think that's really what got him probably on that, because certainly when he worked at Wheatley Hills, he didn't have USGA spec greens.
No
so I think
push-ups.
we recognized, fully. There were some ridges that were absolutely, they were just dust all the time.
Right,
You
right.
could not keep water. There was so much hydraulic head with 30 inches of mix that it just pushed that water through with a little, just a little bit of water would just drain right through. And then you had low spots that were shady, and they're on the front of the green, and so they would be wet. So you'd have exactly the opposite of what you wanted, which is, you had 8 inches of mix, so they'd stay wet. They'd never flush through.
And they're in the throat of the green,
right,
and
right.
where
Or where the
everything's
shots are
turning.
coming in, yeah.
Oh, it's a mess.
So you had some really, so we really had to do a lot of hand watering there. And, I think for the most part, that's where I think I really learned how to hand water, right? I think for Harry, I was young and not really knowing. You're just out there syringing and just told, quick, go over them once. But Hamlet was really like, wow, you really need to pay attention to where things were. And back then, this was, 2000, 2001, there was probably a TDR moisture meter, but I don't think
No one used them.
them
No
at that
one
point.
used them yet. I would say people didn't really start using TDRs until 2010, 2009, 2010.
Yeah, I think I remember trying to use them my first year at Mutton Town, which was 2007.
Okay.
So, and being like right there, like, oh, I think I'm going to use this meter. And then like by 2010, he said like,
Everyone.
I had 3 or 4 of them
Right.
and it was constant.
So yeah, you learned really about what was going on underneath these greens
Yeah.
at Hamlet.
Absolutely,
That's where you really got that.
And, you learned how to do more with less. I know Ravi always talks about that. And, Hamlet wasn't certainly an ideal job. Like pay wasn't great. The hours were long. You're working for Ravideau at the time, who was an animal.
He's still an
And
animal.
I'm sure he's going to listen to this. He was an absolute animal, throwing wrenches and radios and phones and whatever else there is around. If he was angry, you knew to
Well,
like
it's a
get behind something
pressure,
big.
high pressure, high stress job.
Right,
And how big was the crew? You said it.
Yeah, it was a 10-man crew, and so
Yeah.
I think there was 14 of us all together, and we did everything we could do to just basically prove ourselves and get out of there. So when he did that, so he left to go to Wheatley Hills in 2000, I think it was 2002. So I think it was my 3rd season as the assistant.
Okay.
And it was August. And so at that time we had it was called the TD Waterhouse Cup. It was a televised tennis tournament on hard court. And it was
Okay.
the week before the U.S. Open. So you'd attract some stars,
Right.
the U.S. Open tennis.
Yeah. Of
In
course.
August. So it was like the 3rd week in August. So you'd attract some stars, but you'd get kind of like the guys that were on the tail end of their career, the Andre Agassi's. And so they would sign up, and then like they wouldn't show up. Like they would take probably their
my
little,
gosh. Their
appearance
bonus.
fee, and
Right.
they would be knocked out first round or they wouldn't show. But it was stressful because the golf course essentially shut down for the week, except for like some celebrity play. You get some tennis players that would go out and play. but we used to oversee that week too. So you'd have all this going on around the clubhouse and the tennis facility and in the parking lot. They would convert the parking lot into like a whole tent city of vendors and beer tents and things like that. And so there was a lot of landscaping that went in, just potted plants with
just
mulch
make it pretty
around them, make it pretty. And, obviously then there was just a lot of traffic around. So, but we would go and oversee the golf course that whole week.
Wow.
And so
I guess you guys...
It could have been such a great week, right? Every night you could get in free tennis, free beer.
Hang out.
But instead, no, this is the week we're going to like airify and oversee the golf course and work, 12, 14-hour days in the third week in August or second week in August.
You had a tennis crew? There was someone else taking care of those courts?
No, we basically managed everything. There was only 2 hard shoe courts there. But at that time, they built the grandstands on top of them. So the one main center hard court was where all the matches basically happened.
Okay.
So it was, looking back on it, it was pretty small. And I think what happened is a lot of the Europeans would come over. They would take the free Mercedes for the week. They'd eat the food at the nice Jewish club on Long Island. They'd eat the great food.
That's right.
And their wives or girlfriends would come in and hang out for the week. And so it was like a mini vacation and get themselves acquainted with Long Island, get ready for the U.S. Open. Maybe go over there one day, or if you got knocked out early, go start practicing over at the tennis center.
It was the acclimate to the time zone sort of week for these guys. I got it.
But nonetheless, it was cool. It was a cool experience. You'd see these guys on the golf course, and
all of these experiences seem to add up. You also mentioned that you were really living the greenkeeper life when you were at Hamlet, because you had housing with a bunch of other guys that were working at Bethpage.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So you.
So I get the job with Rabideau.
Right.
And he basically says, "Okay, you have the job. This is February of 2000, right? I graduate in May, and." So there was, I guess, a bunch of guys that got jobs on the island working at Bethpage. So Mike Hadley, Brad Fox, and myself decided to go in-house. So Craig Courier, who was at Bethpage at that time, lined up, a house rental for us. So we go to meet the guy and, come to an agreement, and we decide we're going to pay rent, and we're going to come there in second week in May. So we arrived there second week in May. And here we are, it's 3 turf guys thrown into assistants positions. They're getting ready for the 2002 U.S. Open.
Everyone's 23 years old too,
Yeah, if not even younger, maybe 22, right?
Right.
So definitely some good times. I remember not spending a lot of time there. I'd met my wife in, I think, December. Yeah, I should definitely remember this date, December 16th of 2000. But so from basically May to December, I was around a little bit, but. We were all working crazy hours, especially Bethpage, right? They were waking up at, 3 a.m. for, 4 o'clock start. It was super early hours at
2000?
Bethpage. Yeah.
Didn't they have the Open in 2000?
No, 2002.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, but they're working hard.
Jamie, can we pull it up on Google, Jamie? So certainly good times. And then I think Louis, or Ryan Lounslager, graduated, I think, in December of 2000. Another Penn State guy. So he came out and was going to live on the couch. And I definitely, at that time, then I had met my wife, and I was staying at her. She had a really cool apartment in downtown Huntington, which was walking distance to all the bars and restaurants. So I was staying with her pretty much on a nightly basis. And finally, Louis was like, I haven't seen you in 2 months. Can I have your room? And I was like, sure. Can you take the rent too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, let's work this out.
But I used to stop by and hang out with those guys all the time, and that became the Bethpage house.
Yeah,
that was all those guys working at Bethpage, and they started to have interns live there. Tony Moore, I think, parked an RV in the driveway, and it became the Bethpage revolving door of interns and assistants and guys living there. And I don't even know who lived there in the end, but I know Hadley he was the long hauler. He definitely outlasted them all, and obviously is still there. So.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Greenkeeping's fun. This is fun. What we do. You guys work hard, but we have a good time and have good stories from it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Hamlet, you after Rabbi left.
So now Rabbi leaves, goes and get Wheatley, and the owner of the Hamlet basically came to me. Now it's a week before this tennis tournament. And, now it's wow, their world is falling apart. Their superintendent basically just left. I mean, he gave his notice, but basically he was going to Wheatley Hills and looking at dead greens and a bunch of dead grass. And he was taking guys, over, and I definitely remember like battling it out with him, like when he was stealing staff, and I was like, oh, those are my guys, they're your guys. So we definitely had our moments, for a few weeks there, but in the end,
It all worked out.
yeah, calmer heads prevailed for sure.
And
So like they basically turned to me, and I think in their heads they were thinking, well, let's just give this kid a shot for a month or two and see how he does, and then we can always just get rid of him at the end of the season. But we need someone. Right now, it's August. If we just let the golf course go, we're going to have a huge loss in membership. So they gave me a shot, and I was full of piss and vinegar. So I thought I could do it and do it better than Steve. And I said, all right, and I did. And I basically proved them. And at the end of the year, they offered me a 5-year contract. So.
All right. So that's where you really got your start with all the responsibility and everything on you.
Yeah, and doing more with less. And I knew we as Steve knew, was a place that you just had to prove yourself and get out. Mm-hmm. So, we worked a lot of crazy hours as a superintendent. I was doing a lot of mowing and setup and watering and irrigation repair, and we did every irrigation expansion or anything like that all in-house. We were pulling a lot of pipe and doing a lot of drainage work, and everything was in-house. We never had a contractor come in and do anything. Like we built the tee in-house. We did bunkers, we did bunkers in-house. We did irrigation, and we did irrigation in-house.
So when you sit in a boardroom like this and interview for jobs, it sounds like it's that experience at Hamlet that you can really recall and lean on and have the confidence to explain to Greens committees that, yes, I can do this. Like, I can do this work. I know what needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I remember specifically, so after spending 5 years as superintendent at Hamlet, moved on to the Muttontown Club, again, only 20 miles away. And I remember specifically just saying, like, 3 o'clock when the crew went home, that's when all the real work began. That's when we used to do like hop on a fairway mower, get fairways finished, or hop on a rough mower, or decide to go work on irrigation heads. And it was a thing where we worked sun up to sundown every day.
Yeah.
7 days a week, and you just did it. And you didn't think about it.
Yeah. So so you ultimately got the opportunity to get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
and that worked out. Muttontown. Which was also not an easy job by any means, right? I mean,
right.
Like you had some challenges over there as well.
Yeah, I walked into some nematode issues.
Oh, okay.
And was
POA greens at Muttontown.
POA greens, old push-up greens, old property. That was an Alfred Tull design. Beautiful, beautiful clubhouse, an old Georgian-style mansion.
Cool.
Another North Shore Long Island Jewish club, and a very classy place. But the golf course is just sort of, it's a little bit of an course. And they at that time, they had just completed a 4-hole renovation that they were hoping to maybe do some more holes. Mm-hmm. But basically, they did 4 holes over. The local sort of architect, Kelly Blake Moran, who did Laurel Links out in the East End.
Oh, okay.
So he had changed the style of those holes compared to what was, was the typical old Parkland, very, straight fairways. And he kind of had these asymmetrical designs going out and fairways widening towards the greens and putting fairway bunkers in the center of a fairway, which, wasn't the traditional thing there. But, and I had four holes of brand new irrigation.
Oh, so that's nice.
So I had a brand new Toro valve and head, single head control.
How about that?
For 4 holes. And then the rest of the holes were an old Hunter Legacy G90 with a Buckner valve. So it was an old block system.
Wow.
And in the end, I loved the block system. I mean, it wasn't great when you had a head that was in the shade and a head that was in the sun, but it was those Buckner valves were so reliable and they were so easy to work on. If you had a problem, you just shut off the shutoff valve right there, the ball valve, and replace the solenoid or anything like that. There was really not a lot of digging up of the heads because the heads didn't have constant pressure. They only came on with the valve, so it was just a typical block system. And it was great. I mean, I still say I was like, they never gave us any problems. Whereas the Toro now it was like a huge training process for all the staff to learn the Toro, the valve and head.
Oh, interesting.
Learning about pilot valves and replacing
drives
and stators and all the good irrigation stuff. So a lot of taking apart heads and fixing and replacing parts and heads and putting them back. And at the same time, we had an issue with the well. So we were starting to pump some of the well gravel. The screen was torn or whatever it was and broken down. So we really started to to see a lot of that in the head. So we had a lot of clogs. So it became like, our nemesis for sure. It was like, oh my God, we have all these heads with all this stuff in them, constantly getting clogs, and that would just cause a whole slew of problems.
So you mentioned when you got there nematode issues, quote unquote nematode issues, right?
Yep.
So what did you quickly resolve that, or can you elaborate a little bit on what you thought that was?
I think the previous superintendent had applied Nemacure prior to me getting there.
Okay.
So I think that was a solved issue.
So there were high levels.
Yeah, I mean,
who knows?
I don't have any evidence to say that there were not. But that was just, at the time they had a consultant there as well. So, that was that's what I was told, and I just knew that I had a bunch of greens that had a lot of grass missing on them. So I was basically in charge of, I was hired like first week in November. So
did you focus on roots? I mean,
I just focused on getting grass.
Yeah.
I just had immediately guys out there aerifying and seeding and, a little spiker seeder, all these little areas. And at that time we were ripping apart covers and putting covers over them and just trying to get good germination. And we did. And for the most part.
What time of year did you get there?
So November.
Oh, okay.
So this was like, really heading into the off season, and you don't expect a lot heading into November, December, but
you get the seed in the ground and you throw the covers on it and see what you can get.
Yeah. And then I tell you what, I think we had a pretty mild year that year too. So I feel like by March, April, I feel like everything was just back to normal for them.
So that was around the time that we met, but I mean, now you've been here at Glen Head for 10 years, and we've been working together for that time. In terms of some EarthWorks work. Let's talk a little bit about Glen Head before we wrap up. What's this golf course like? Parkland Golf Course.
So Parkland Golf Course. It's it's an interesting place. It was called Women's National way back in the day, and so Marion Hollins, who was the daughter of like the MGA founder, and who also went on to build Pasatiempo, and so a really prominent woman golfer of her time.
Yes.
So she set out to build a basic club for women's. The story is that she. They were all the families were members of Creek, and there was no women golf, so they set out to build a course for women. It eventually went under, and then reopened in 1947 as Glen Head Country Club.
Okay, cool.
So we believe that the routing may have been a little bit different, but basically all the green sites and tee sites we still believe are about the same.
Who was the architect?
So the architect at that time was a collaboration. So they say it was a Seth Rayner, a C.B. McDonald, and a Devereux Emmett. So you can't think of like three better architects to like collaborate on the golf course.
Gosh.
But I'll say like I don't see any of those three architects here. Everyone's like, oh, the history that I'm like, I don't really have much history. First of all, that was like a previous club, and I hear that there may be some archives over a creek or Piping Rock that it's like up in the attic someplace that there's some old paperwork, but there's not a lot of information for us on the golf course. So we try to go back to some of the old aerials and look at things, and it's interesting, but at the same time, the membership isn't really history buffs. They're not really into knowing what the place was like when it was Women's National.
Yeah, it was a different place then.
It was certainly a different place. So it's been Glen Head Country Club. It's a great place. It's a great piece of property.
It's got some great
natural terrain.
Like when you got this job here, what were some of their goals that they discussed with you, and what are some of the things you've executed in the last
so when
10
I got
years?
here, the place was in great shape. Lynn O'Neill, who did a 30-year stint here, another Penn Stater.
Okay, cool.
Great superintendent. I think number one, he was in retirement age and he retired, and I think they were looking for a younger, fresher face. Mm-hmm. Someone to be a little more out in front of the membership a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think someone just to clean the place up and focus a little bit more on detail work.
Okay.
So at that time, they had just completed bunker renovation. They had called John Harvey and basically did a redesign of all the bunkers. And so all the bunkers were redone. The green surrounds were all resodded. So the place was starting to look, much better. Bunch of car path work, a little bit of tee work. And so I think they really just needed someone to come in and sort of polish the gem, peel back the layers of the onion.
Nice.
And with tree removal and maybe some tee complex work and just focus really on daily conditioning.
Perfect.
And so that's what we really focused on, a lot more hand watering, as one of the members here, an old-time member who's been very influential member with the Long Island Golf Association, Marty Winkleman. He always just said, like, oh, you new soups, you just shut off the water. You just shut off the water and Southern is fast and firm.
Yeah, and that tends to be what works, right? I mean, like that is certainly a path to getting the conditions that you want.
Yeah.
Just reduce that water. Now this year, particularly 2022, major challenge. Did you a lot of drought, a lot of difficulty? You guys got some boomers through here in the middle of summer.
I think listen. I think if you looked at the the NOAA drought monitor, we're still in like a moderate drought, but 10 miles south of here on the South Shore of Long Island, they're in a severe drought. Mm-hmm. We tend to get some of those thunder showers that come in across the Hudson River, and they, sometimes it's hit or miss. They break up as they hit the sound, and sometimes they put nothing on us, and sometimes they put 5 inches in 1 hour. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we definitely were in a really long dry spell, but it could have been worse.
The golf course fared well?
I think the golf course fared well. I think you can see it in the rough, but I think my native was the best it's been in 10 years since being here. So. Nice. I think that's just all about having good, dry summer weather. When you get heavy rains in July, the native just sort of goes to crap, right? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. This was, a little chat about EarthWorks. This was one of the first seasons that you were using C3 pretty extensively.
Yeah, I've been fighting the sales pitches from you and John, and I've been certainly hearing about the results for a few years, but always a little hesitant. My hesitation is always, how will I know? So
right.
The golf course is in great shape, and up until the pandemic, I really didn't have a lot of car traffic. Didn't really have a lot of play. So it's really difficult to see the difference on some of these products, and you're always kind of wary of what's snake oil and what's
no doubt
tried and true. So after talking with some of my colleagues, and
that's right,
we started to, we dove in with a full program of C3 this year, and I definitely feel like, and it was especially now with the increased play and increased car traffic, I definitely feel like, probably was the difference, right? I know there's a lot of other courses that, with the drought and the heat that we had this year and the increase in play,
it was a good
fairways
year to try
can take it on the chin, and I have to say our fairways really held up well.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Dude, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate it. And great stories. Like, this was a lot. This podcast is supposed to be, greenkeeping stories and really coming up what it's like to come up through this kind of unique industry. And your experience is certainly fits that. And you've told some great stories here. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, dude.
It's great to be able to recall some of those old stories. It's been a long time since I've talked about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of guys listening will think back and to their similar experiences. And it's we burn the candle hard in this industry.
Yeah. Well, the glory days, you got to recall the glory days. You live on a lot of the glory days now that we're starting to turn middle aged and have kids. And
well, hold on. Another thing that you and I share, I'll throw out there. We're both big Dead fans.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And we had a good right before the pandemic. Remember that fall night, the fall fun run?
Yeah, we saw Dead and Company at Nassau Coliseum.
Nassau, dude. Well, great memory of mine is we were on opposite sides of the arena, looking out, and I could see across the floor over to you, waving with big hands in the air.
Absolutely. I think it was Book's first Dead show too. So.
We had we got a Dark Star that night too.
Christening,
dude.
Yeah.
That was an awesome. That was the last time I saw them too. I think. Actually.
I haven't been to a bad Dead and Company show yet, and I'm sorry to see that they're going to be ending their run here this summer. So it's going to be. It's going to be a good summer, I guess. It's going to be hopefully a lot of concerts.
You've done those City Field shows, right?
Yeah, I've done several, pretty much every single one since 2016.
Yeah, that's kind of a home venue for this band, City Field. That's like that's a shining star for them.
It certainly feels like it, right? I feel like Mayer is certainly. I feel like he's always on fire.
You were probably at that show with the Wolf, where he played the Garcia guitar.
Yeah, he played Wolf. It was a pretty amazing show. That was definitely probably the best show I've seen.
Okay, cool.
But there's other good ones. I follow them all on Nugs, and I listen to them all, and I try to watch when I can. But I certainly feel like there's something special about New York for them.
Oh, absolutely.
I think going back to like New York and San Francisco back in the old days of the Dead, and Fillmore East and Fillmore West, I feel like that's where all the really good classics came from.
No doubt.
I certainly feel like there is a feeling.
Oh yeah,
from the band, and there's an energy when they're playing, here and on the West Coast.
Yeah, because we give it our all here. We're throwing it right back.
Right. Well, New York is just a lively place, right? So I think they also feel that energy from the crowd and just really turn it back, right?
Absolutely. All right, man. This
Jack,
is excellent. Thank you, pal. All right, good deal. We'll wrap it up. Thank you all for listening to the EarthWorks podcast, and don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, hear the 2-Minute Turf Talks. All right, so long.